person. I'm going to re-say that shit. That's not what I want to say. The man, the myth, the legend. Leads counsel, executive director. Hey, everybody, it's Rob Seaver, leads counsel, executive director. Man, I can't get director out. It's Rob Seaver, executive director. I say this 100,000 times.
Beep.
Hey, everybody. Rob Seaver, Executive Director with Leads Counsel. I am super excited to bring you the third edition of our on-air podcast series. I cannot tell you how excited I am about this guest that I'm bringing on. He is one of our board members. As you hear me say with everyone as I introduce our board members, I have my favorites and I have my favorites. So they're all my favorites. But this one is absolutely growing on me. He's somebody that will not hold his opinion when asked, somebody that I'm super excited to bring to you guys, AC Evans, Aaron Christopher Evans. We have the acronym list going with you. I welcome you to the On Air podcast and thank you for taking some time with me today.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for having me. And I think most of that was a compliment. So thank you for that.
It is absolutely a compliment. Back at the Anyway, hey, look, help me break down a little bit of, what is a DRIPS, who is a DRIPS, and what is an AC Evans? I mean, there are people who want to know.
Sure. Who I am, entrepreneur, been in the marketing, lead gen, automation, programming kind of world for the better part of 2 decades now. I had my first business when I was 17, I believe, and haven't looked back since. DRIPS is what I would call my first real business. I've had a lot of projects, a lot of arbitrage deals, a lot of lead generation, marketing publisher type things. And long story short, about 7-8 years ago, I woke up, I was 32 years old, about to get married, and I hadn't built anything that was sustainable or lasting. I'd had a lot of what I call money hacks, ways to make money, good living, fun living, whatnot, but no big real enterprise value was brought to the world. So DRIPS was one of those projects that I began to work on a few years ago, and it's the one that is really taken off. We had 5 or 6 different businesses, myself and my co-founder, our CTO, and DRIPS stood out amongst them, and we've just been leaning into it ever since. DRIPS is the first in its kind conversational texting platform. What that means is a texting platform that is meant to not just send messages or do, as they would say, drip campaigns. It is meant to hold full, humanized, automated conversations at scale.
That's a mouthful. Much easier for you to say than for me, as our intro really showed itself as I was trying to get it out. Hey, before we get into the real meat and potatoes of text messaging, because I think that I've got some questions on that. This is obviously very special times. Companies are pivoting every day. I want to bring up the fact that thankfully for you, you're giving me your staff to be able to hold next week's webinar. Super appreciative of that. But I'm really excited about the fact that this is really relevant and timely. The title of this webinar next week is going to be Critical Pivots in the Face of a Crisis. And so before we get really into the meat and potatoes of text messaging, I know DRIPS has had to make some critical pivots. Give us some up-to-date things. I want to get our celebrity that we're going to continue to promote out there, Kevin, the executive chef. So I want to talk about him a little bit, but in general, what pivots has DRIPS and what pivots has AC made as it relates to this crisis?
Great question. And a lot. I think most companies out there have had to make some severe changes. Very very quickly. I remember it was February when we were at the show in Orlando, and I was going to Disney, and
So
nobody was thinking about it. And not enough at least. And 3-4 weeks later, we're all working from home and trying to figure it out. Let's see, shifts that DRIPS specifically has had to make. Luckily, we're logistically speaking, our COO did a really great job of bringing a work from home culture into the business. He came on a little bit more than a year ago, Justin Miller, and he got it to the point where our team, they can elect to do 1 or 2 days a week work from home. So there was all the policies and procedures and, security and everything that goes into that already in place. Um, about 40% of our staff is remote anyway. So, luckily, again, logistically speaking, it was just, I talked to the partnership, we made a call, we sent everybody home a week or two before Ohio started doing shelter in place. So that felt really good as a business owner to make the decision for our team, not because the company because the state made us, but because we wanted to keep everybody comfortable and safe and secure. So that wasn't too bad. Excuse me. Logistically speaking, I actually set up. I'm in our corporate condo right now. I moved. I don't have an office at home. I'm one of the. I'm the type. I know a lot of executives do a really good job at integrating work and home. I've made a very deliberate effort to separate the two. We're bootstrap startup. My wife's been, up and down through the roller coasters with me, and I try to keep work as outside of her purview and the house as possible, to the point where I get home, I take off my uniform, my jersey. I got a different outfit that I wear when I'm at
You
home.
don't have drips pajamas? I kind of
No,
see you as that, right? No?
no, no, I don't.
Disappointed.
Tommy John, I'll throw a shout out to those guys. They make
Got it.
really comfy
Got it.
stuff.
Paid
Um,
endorsement.
yeah. But I have two phones. So when I get into my car, I have another iPhone. This one goes into airplane mode, and then the other one comes off airplane mode. Only my partners and our chief of staff have that number. So, a lot of deliberate separation. So anyway, that's a long explanation of why I'm not working at home. I'm at our corporate condo. I just sent I don't know if you saw the haircut video, of
I
my
did.
toddler. So like you see her with her duck horn or whatever that
Yes.
thing is. So working from home was not a good option for me. So luckily, we're privileged enough that the company has an office condo that we have set up for all those remote employees and partners and peers that come into town. We set them up here. So I just, set up a desk and I got nice focus work time and peace and quiet. And so yeah, logistically that was all pretty easy. We paused on hiring as soon as everything got real serious. Just made a hard pause on all hiring. We reallocated and reforecasted budgets from the ground up, made everybody re-justify all the different spends that they thought they may need to make, because we didn't know how it was going to affect things. We saw, as an example, companies like you'll talk to at this webinar, 3 Day Blinds. They have to pause everything. They're not able to operate. Period. So they had to pause all new performance marketing procurement, which is where a lot of our relationship is with them. We saw others like Ryan Hemker, another new board member to the Leads Council of Liberty Mutual. They hard paused everything as well as they shifted everybody to work from home. It's a huge account for Drips. It's one of our biggest brands, if not the biggest, and that was a scary pause. And we paused alongside of a lot of other
Yeah.
companies while we waited to see what the fallout may be for our portfolio. Ryan and Liberty did an amazing job. They were back up and live in, I think it was like 8 business days. Uh,
Amazing.
yeah, moved thousands of people to work from home. Saw a similar effort from creditrepair.com, another friend of the boards, Jesse Beal.
Mm.
They did a great job. So we were in a kind of a sit back, wait, reforecast, replan, reallocate budgets. I'm excited to be doing more webinars like this, podcasts like this, more thought leadership stuff online, because we don't have the stage anymore, right? There is no conferences to attend right now, and we'll see, how that changes everything moving forward. But long story short, Drips has been one of those fortunate few that are in a really good position that this thing is not crippled us in any way. We're actually growing through it. We've had record months the past 2 months running, uh, record months from all time. So we actually just reopened up hiring. Uh, so it's all good news over here. I'm very, very fortunate and lucky to say.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know that that's not everybody's story, but when I do get on with these calls and I talk to people and I hear those types of things, man, it gives me hope, at least. And I think that a lot of us need that at this point in time, for sure.
Yeah.
It's been exciting, but you did miss one critical element that I really wanted to back up and talk about
Oh,
because
Kevin,
Kevin, the
Kevin.
executive chef. You have an
So
executive chef, right?
yes,
For
yes,
the company, for the
Drips,
company.
yeah, Drips as an executive chef at headquarters. We prepare 5 hot meals every week, lunch every week,
Oh,
and I mean real meals. If you go to our Instagram, it's at Drips. You'll see some of these. I mean, it's chicken carbonara, it's bibimbap, it's sushi, it's
wow.
tacos. It's everything. It's not casseroles, every week or whatever. It's not regular catered buffet style food. I mean, these are real meals. He prepares a regular set of food, vegan set, vegetarian set,
Wow.
specialty. Some people have strawberry allergies and whatnot. It's really great. I actually learned this from a industry friend of mine, Nick Newsom, CEO of Ytel. Uh, Ytel is one of the providers we've used over the years for
Name
our
drop.
Yep. I learned a lot from Nick, but one of the things that I think I take away the most from them specifically was the lunch. I had visited them in Foothill Ranch with my partners, and they brought in all this food, and it was just this huge thing, and everybody was gathering for lunch. And I thought they did it just for us. I was like, oh man,
Mm.
thanks for catering food. That was cool. You didn't have to do that. And he goes, no, we do this every day.
Uh,
I was just like, every day? How do you do lunch every day? And what is the cost? I mean, he
yeah.
had 60 some employees. I said, what is the cost like for that? And he started breaking down the numbers. He said, but look, he said, watch what happens. From a culture standpoint, you have departments cross pollinating that generally just wouldn't, right? You have developers talking to marketing people, you have salespeople talking to uh, quality assurance people, you have legal talking to finance, whatever it may be. But you got all these what would normally be disparate departments that are now holding really good conversations. They're at work, they're eating good food, healthy food, and the cynical side of it. And he explained this to me. He's like, "Watch how long this takes. As soon as 12 o'clock hit, everybody stood up, they went, they ate, and by 12:25, they were heading back to their desks." Versus a normal corporate environment where 11:45 hits, some people start leaving, 1:15 finally rolls around, everybody's back to work, and full swing of things. So it's great, and it's a real perk too,
Mm.
right? So there's if you want to justify it cynically speaking, you can do the math. Like I actually did this math with our CFO, and I think it's like after I think it was 16 or 17 head count, it pays for itself more or less with the time that the company gets back and the efficacies the company gets. But um sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Uh, I'll pick you back up here. I mean, to me, culture seems to be, I mean, when you're looking at the things that Drips really brings to the table, employee focused, you know, culture first, make the environment good for people. They'll keep coming back. They'll want more. You
Yeah.
get more as in return from that.
Oh,
And
I know what
so,
I know what it was. Two
yeah, go
two
ahead. Yeah.
things. One, it's a real perk, right? So it's
Yeah.
something you should do for your employees, just like you should do health insurance, right? The average American spends $3,000 a year on lunch slash coffee. So if you provide lunch and coffee, you're saving them $3,000 a year effectively. The second thing is the culture piece that you just brought up. So one of the first things that was brought up to me, and I mean literally by 8 different employees, and these are some of the couple of these employees they rarely, it was the first Slack I'd ever got from them as an example. Like I talk to them, I'm friendly with them, but we don't have a ton of direct communication. Their messages to me when we said we are going to start sending people home were, what's going to happen to Kevin? That was what everybody cared about, and I just thought that was so cool. Like Kevin is
Yeah.
the heart and soul of our culture at HQ. um, and long story short, Kevin's fine. Kevin's still employed. He's still a full time employee. He's doing research for marketing. He's working on a Drips cookbook. He's helping do quality assurance. A week before we sent everybody home, uh, his manager and I talked, and we started cross training Kevin on different departmental things so he could help fill in the gap. So Kevin's still great. He's looking forward to getting back to cooking. He's been scratching the itch every day. He's been helping me. I think I can say this out loud. I doubt my wife's going to tune into this, but as a Mother's Day surprise for the last 2 weeks and for the next 2 or 3 weeks, I've been cooking breakfast every day for lunch here at the corporate condo. And Kevin has been doing a one-on-one private with me, teaching me just the basic. I mean, how to cook eggs.
That's awesome.
I've
Yeah.
cooked my wife like a total of 2 meals in her life. So I thought it'd be a I don't know. I've seen those dads and husbands that maybe it's only in the TV, but that cook breakfast for their kids and wives, and I just think it's such a cool thing. So
I,
I'm
I
looking
think it
forward
is
to
only on the TV. I don't know,
yeah.
maybe.
My dad sure as hell didn't cook me breakfast. He'd like give me a box of cereal
Um,
and you know.
But look, man, I mean, I took that pause to talk about that because I think that especially in today's times where I'm seeing some cracks, I'm seeing a little bit of a break or a bend in some people where they need something to ground themselves back to reality. I think it's important that although we want to take advantage of talking about text messaging and what Drips does, I think it's important for us to bring that human element back in. I force that into everything that we do. So thank you for indulging me for that.
I love
I,
it.
I do want to get now into the fact that I'm a consumer. I understand text messaging from the fact that I've got teenagers, and now I prefer even to text message. I think people prefer to text message me because it's so much shorter than getting on a call with me. Um, the question that I have is I don't know a lot about it. Like I don't know the difference between SMS and TXT and iMessage, and help break that down at least before we get into any kind of high level stuff. Help me understand, like, what am I missing here, or is it easier or harder than that?
No, a lot of it's industry vernacular, SMS, texting, iMessage. It's all the same thing. iMessage is a specific to iPhone, right? So that they have their own platform, so you don't get billed for the texting. They have other enabled things where you can thumbs up things and do more what's eventually going to be RCS, rich text type things. But yeah, SMS texting, text messaging for the purposes of this conversation, it's all the same thing. It's what we think about when we think of texting. I'm sending you a short message service is what SMS stands for. There's a lot of technologies coming up and going on that are going to be additions to that. You have things like 10 DLC. uh, you have again RCS. You have more rich text functionality. But again, for the purposes of this conversation, I think just thinking of it as what we think of texting, right? You texting me, Chipotle texting you a gift card. The difference between that is what we're doing is what I would call conversational. That's what
Mhm.
Drip specializes in and what we focus on. And then there's other text messaging platforms and methodologies that are more push, right? They're like Chipotle is sending you a link for a coupon, and they are not looking to hold a conversation. They're not enabled. They don't have that enabled. They're not able to. That's where most brands and most companies that are doing texting. That's where they're at. They're in the push uh, phase where they're sending outbound. They have not yet figured out that a lot of people want to text back. That's how people think of texting. If you only push and you only send alerts and you only send coupons, people are going to opt out of what I would almost consider a newsletter at that point. They're missing the point. The point is, I think I've heard this said before, right? Like big brands have to act small in this world, this on demand economy. Texting is the best mechanism and methodology to do that if you can do it conversationally. If you can hold a one-to-one conversation between a brand and a consumer where the consumer believes they're talking to a human, and that is the crux. That's the
I,
magic.
I absolutely relate to that because there are times where I get messages from companies that almost infuriate me or they confuse me. And I want to say something back, but then when I say something back, it's just like, or if you'd like to opt out, and I'm like, no, that's not what I'm asking. What I'm trying to say is I don't understand, or you just pissed me off. So,
Yeah.
I as a consumer, I absolutely agree that that has to be a change moving forward.
Yes, yeah. Companies are starting to get it now. It's funny, even when we first started, when we were doing drips in the beginning. This is 2014, I think. We were push. We were sending out text messages, trying to get people back on the phone for a debt consolidation client of ours that eventually became a partner of ours, and we realized that all these people were texting back, right? And we're like, oh, what are they saying? And the value of the responses and being able to nurture them contextually is what it's all about, because people were saying, I don't want it anymore, right? And then we call them again or we text them again, or people would say, call me now. and we wouldn't text them until the next day. People say, how much does it cost? And we had no response for that. That's where the value really is being able to automate those. But to your point, that most bot, this is why you'll never see drips and bot mentioned in the
Mm,
same medium. If it's up to me, it's because I think the bot um, experience is very poor right now. You can tell it's a bot, and people don't want to text with a bot. People don't want to respond more for more information. They want to hold a conversation. They want to, and they want to hold a conversation to schedule a time to have a call. Like that. That's the thing. Like that's the big difference. Everybody's busy now, right? Everybody has Amazon and Netflix and well, we had sports. We don't have sports right now, but everybody has something else they'd rather be doing. Oh, that's my alarm. Hold on. This is my bacon that I was frying. Let me open up.
well, while AC avoids his fire alarm from going off because obviously his cooking that he's doing is now creating a smoke hazard in his corporate environment. We'll try to cut some of this out. Maybe we'll just keep it to see how long it takes for AC to avoid the Ohio Fire Department breaking in and helping him. I wish I was Joe Buck right now, actually, just commentating on the fact that AC now has gone into 3 different rooms. He's opened 3 windows. He's still receiving a alarm. Now he's just ripped the alarm off the wall and is quickly removing the battery so it doesn't. And now we're getting rejoined by
I do not
AC.
believe we have carbon monoxide problems. If you see me fall over and slouch in my chair, call 911.
What city? Because I said you're in Ohio. So when I said when the
Akron,
fire,
yeah,
Akron, Ohio.
yeah,
By
Akron,
the way, I
Ohio.
think I'm going to keep that entire bit
Maybe
because
fast
I
forward.
know I tried to Joe Bucket. You know what I'm saying? Like you were opening windows, you were ripping off the smoke alarms. That was awesome. Hey,
Great.
look, man, look, people have dogs interrupt people, other people burn bacon.
Yep.
So hey, look, I think if we get back to where we were talking about, you were breaking down the difference between bought, static noise that people tune out and just don't appreciate to real conversational marketing, which really is the core of where Drips is, and maybe where
Sure.
we can pivot now. So let's talk a little bit more about that because I wouldn't imagine that Drips is able to have an executive chef and the culture that you have if it was just a platform that pushed out SMS, right? So
Absolutely.
there's a lot of science behind that, and there's a lot of reason why companies would engage you guys, right? Like you sent me a list of things, and no, and whether or not we click off that list, but it really interested me. You had bananas and toilet paper all in the same list, right? And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, how do you connect SMS with toilet paper and bananas?
Scarcity. Scarcity
Scarcity.
was the I believe that. Yeah, these were my once you get down to the point where you can do conversational texting, which again is just difficult at scale. Anybody can do it with 50 leads a day or 100 leads a day, but when you're talking about Liberty Mutual or Gainsco or 3-day blinds or creditrepair.com, it becomes very, very, very difficult to hold millions of concurrent conversations. The next level is, I always say, the creative is the variable, right? Like you can send out message A to a control group and message B to the control group, and one of those messages will do better. Just like on a website, a red button may outperform a blue button, or a red button may outperform with male viewers, and a blue button will do better with female viewers. Split testing, right?
Hmm.
And there's a ton of marketing psychology that goes into this. The bananas and toilet paper thing was, like there's no shortage of toilet paper in the world, right? Like we have plenty of it. There's plenty in the supply chain. Yet it's gone, right? It's totally gone. You can't buy toilet paper anywhere. And that's because people have a fear of what's called scarcity. And scarcity goes back where it comes from bananas is like, that's our ape, lizard brain. When, you're hungry and you see one banana between me and Rob, there's a problem, right? Because we don't know if there's more bananas coming, right? That's how we were built. That's in our DNA. And a lot of this marketing psychology is all about that. It's all about, literally human evolution and human survival. It's all just baked into our psyche.
And so, uh, I understand I understand that mentality, especially as a consumer who's out there canvassing, the Sam's Clubs and the Costco's on a regular basis. I guess, how does that fit into, let's say, for instance, like one-time offers or, urgency and all of
Yeah,
that other stuff? Does all that factor into this conversational picture?
that's exactly right. So let's just use a couple examples. So let's say you're talking about, let's just use Gainsco as an example. I believe Nicole will be on the webinar
Mhm.
coming up in a few days here. They are some of the best in this. They're some of the most thoughtful that I've seen. Where yes, we could reach out and get good contact, right? Good engagement for their subscribership, get people on the phone, but they take it a step further. Where we're thinking about 5 days later, if somebody didn't buy, we're marking down the price of the policy, right? Or we're offering some special, or we're offering a special for the next 20 minutes. You put some urgency in there, you put some scarcity in there. You don't want to be deceitful with it, to be clear, but if you're at the point where you're not going to bind a policy, maybe you do give them a first month free, or you know whatever it might be. Pay for a year, sign up for a year, you get a couple months free. So you show some concession. Now people feel like they're getting a deal, right? So they're like, okay, well, I'm getting a deal. There's only one day left. I better get this thing now. Some of our last day drips do better than the first day drips because
Mm,
of those concessions.
yeah.
Um, and there's just a ton of other different things that go into it. You can think of recency as an example. So being contextually relevant and explaining, why you're reaching out to somebody, because they found you on Facebook, because they found you on Google, mentioning that it came from Google, knowing that somebody that searched you on Google has a higher propensity to buy than somebody that just happened to see an ad on Facebook. You have to bifurcate all these different user groups and speak to them completely differently to get the optimal outcome.
By the way, for all of you listeners out there, we are creating a AC to English dictionary. So when he uses words like bifurcate, we'll have the pronunciation and the explanation of that at the end of this. So I want to move forward. I do appreciate it, AC. I really do appreciate it. It just to me, I have to point out when it's like I am going to look that up. I can't spell it, but I'm going to hope Google helps. So the question that I have for you is that I go to a lot of these conferences and there are terms that are thrown around a lot, and I hear this one term, omni-channel,
Mm.
and I think people probably misunderstand and equally misuse that word. How though? But it does incorporate this and this and this and this and this. And where does drips and where does this conversational texting and messaging, where does that fit into that? And how do you like social and stuff like that? How do you move in and out of this conversation and work in a world of the omni channel world that we have?
It's a great question. I candidly think that omni-channel is kind of bullshit, personally. Sorry if we need to bleep that out. Um, I've never seen anybody crush it with omni-channel. Right now, there's a couple big, big companies, Genesis, Avaya type companies, right, that service some of these monster enterprise. They're going to be the closest ones to maybe be able to crack it. Now, that being said, for a small call center, a small debt consolidation shop, something like that, there are absolutely tools out there that can manage your social, your text, your this, your that, your calls, your emails, whatever. But you can't, an enterprise can't adopt a tool like that. They just can't. Like, logistically speaking, there's too many stakeholders, there's too many, problems, there's too much red tape, there's like too much company alignment you would have to get a big enterprise to adopt a true omni-channel type tool. Um, and that being said, I don't even know if they want to anymore. I've seen like, it's two things. One, years ago, and less year over year, enterprises care to try to get omni-channel. I mean, they don't need one tool that's good at everything. They want whatever tool, whatever service that is great at what they do. That's why we focus so, I mean, laser focus on conversational texting. Like, we don't do email. We can, we can ping SendGrid, we can ping a client's email, ESP, email service provider. But we don't focus on email, right? Nor do we try to build a call center. We could. That would be another thing that we could do as an upsell, but we stay very focused. And we found that enterprises these days, big service provider companies. When I say enterprise, I mean like the Liberty Mutuals, the AT&Ts, the whatevers of the world, the ADTs. Excuse me. They are happy now with a fragmented solution, meaning they have Salesforce for CRM, they have Drips for conversational texting, they have the best email company in the world for email, they have this company to monitor their social. So that's the way I'm seeing it. And also, a lot of enterprises are abandoning their build versus buy methodology. I think there's been a couple changing of the guards where different groups came in and said, we can build it, and they didn't, and they spent a lot of money, and they built something that was kind of decent, but they would have been better off using the specialist.
Do
um,
you
Go
see
ahead.
yourself more as just a level of a tech stack then at that point? Is
Yeah,
that really where it fits in?
it's called a fragmented solution. That's where a lot of enterprises are shifting to, where they don't feel the need to try to find one tool that can do everything. They And again,
Hmm.
you got to remember, with enterprise specifically, they couldn't adopt, even if the God tool existed, right? That's what me and my CTO jokingly call it. And any perfect software that doesn't really exist, even if it did exist, Liberty Mutual could not technically or logistically or legally get all the stakeholders in the room and make this big shift to change out their CRM, their dialer, their texter, their emailer, their social media tool, whatever it might be. There might be 500 people involved in that shift. What they can do is they can swap out their social media platform for some other social media platform. They can swap out their texting stack or add a texting stack, but it's very, very difficult to try to do more than one of those at the same time.
I was I was hoping that as
Yeah,
you were
I knew,
going
I knew.
to I thought he's gonna do it. Please just do it. Um, I do want to. I want to stick on this because I as a marketer, some I run a spot on the back end, and it's so important for me to learn from this channel to how it influences this channel and take those learnings. And then, so I would suspect that even though we're talking about fragmented solutions or fragmented things within the ecosystem, there still is learnings that can happen from one to the other, though, right? Because do
Absolutely.
you share things or you take in things to learn? And I mean, how does that work?
Absolutely. I think of, I always think of like signals, right? Like Jornayan and Boga are big on this, right? Like activating signals based on inputs, right?
Mhm.
So we work with a lot of the same clients that those two do. And as an example, if somebody comes through our platform and texts back with the double middle finger emoji, and we know that that's not good, right? They didn't say stop, but that is a revocation of consent, right? Like our friends at Morgan and
That's how
Morgan.
Joe Leskowski and I say hello every morning. So
Yeah.
we may do some learning.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
we,
true
we we
story, by
we
the way.
we cover
Anyway,
the that's awesome. We cover this at your show in Orlando, right? And the guys from Morgan and Morgan, they said absolutely, that is a revocation of consent.
yeah.
Somebody, what do they say, alto, and they're saying stop in Spanish or whatever they may be saying. If their intent is to be removed from that list, especially if they're using uppercases and middle finger emojis and angry faces and exclamation marks and things like that, you want to treat that person differently, and you want to move that person throughout every place in your organization. So
Mhm.
something like that, we would treat that as a tier one complainer, is how we label them. And that signal would go back to the brand, the enterprise, and they should scrub that person from all outbound. Like,
Mm.
why send that person a direct mail? Why ever call that person again, right? All you're going to do is brand damage. So that's a good example. Another example is somebody texts back, we offer whatever, a Liberty Mutual auto insurance quote, and somebody texts back and says, uh, this isn't Rob, and I would never drive a effing Honda, right? Or whatever, and that's probably a fat fingered lead, maybe a fraud lead. We call them questionable validity. So it's
Mhm.
somebody that, we don't believe that lead actually opted in. Now, we don't do anything with that other than stop messaging the person and send that signal back to the brand. That may go through, Invoca or Janai or wherever, but it eventually it's going to trigger the brand to say, do you want to scrub this lead? Do you want to remove this lead from all your other marketing efforts? Do you want to push that lead back to the publisher that gave it to you and say, hey, I don't think I should have to pay $40 for this person who said they don't own a Honda and they don't know why we're reaching out to them. So, any insights that we can glean from the conversations and share with the enterprises are good insights.
You know, uh, I think, well, one, thank you. That answered, at least answered part of my question as it related to, like, how does this one single tech in the stack, how does it learn and, so something that, uh, do that. And I think the responsibility also to do that as somebody who is probably controlling, and maybe I'm getting this wrong, but a lot of the relationship, if I get this right, a lot of the relationship between a brand and their customer, you guys facilitate that relationship, or at least at some level, you facilitate the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. The platform does. I mean, we are acting as agents of the brand. So at no time do we say, "Hey, Rob, it's Strips reaching out for
Right, for
ABT,"
sure. Yeah.
But and all the messaging that we send, all the cadences, all the permutations of it, all the frequently asked questions, those are approved by and/or co-created and collaborated on with the enterprise. But yeah, I mean, we take extra care, and this is to protect ourselves and to protect our clients, right? We take extra care. I was looking back in my emails, digging up something um not too long ago, and I saw, I think it was 2015, we had just engaged with one of the big TCPA law firms, and we were asking about state level laws and the different federal level laws and holidays and how to handle weekends, and can you text at night, and should you, and how many, how often. And this was in 2015. This is when people were barely texting at all. And we took just a very deliberate commitment to compliance back then, and have only continued that now. uh, and
I
companies are doing really interesting things with it. Like I forgot to bring it up earlier, but we're talking about how are companies reaching out with this, and like what is the difference between, push notifications. Imagine, and Nicole can bring this up next week, but they are doing things where if a hailstorm is about to hit, they're texting you and saying, hey Rob, you should bring in your car, we see a
Mhm.
hailstorm's about to hit you. Think of what that does for consumer engagement, brand integrity, them liking the brand, right? You just saved me from a big trouble from having to do a claim, and the money that the insurance carrier saves because they don't have to file a claim now, or they don't have to
Yes,
pay
yeah,
for a claim. It's
yeah,
huge.
it's huge. Yeah, I never really thought about the level of accountability and responsibility that your platform actually shoulders. And I, maybe you don't, maybe that, if you thought of it that way every day, maybe you wouldn't sleep. But at the same point, I'm getting that this is a huge amount of responsibility. So, I want to work through this list because you now triggered me to want to jump straight to regulatory and compliance, but I don't want to jump the gun because you put together this awesome list. But I think that we missed, or at least skipped over, consistency, commitment, priming, and authority. And although maybe we don't want to take the expanded view of that, is there anything inside of that? Because what I do want to get to, because you did pique my interest down at the bottom to tell a Snicker story. So I
Oh,
can't imagine that
Snickers.
you get to the Snicker story because so intrigued, right?
Yeah, I
The
left
consistency, any
little Easter egg there for you.
yeah. So help me understand anything types of subjects that I don't want to skim over if you wanted to talk about, writing SRO or getting legal opinions. I mean, I want to get back into the regulatory compliance as its own little segment here, but is there anything in there, get a yes before the yes, for example, that you may want to break down very quickly?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of this is just basic marketing psychology. There was a book called Influence. If anybody really wants to dig into this, it's probably the best book on the subject there is. It's called Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion by Dr. Robert uh, Cialdini, Cialdini. But that's where a lot of these come from. I added a handful of others in. Um, all this stuff is basic stuff, like if it's the yes before the yes, it's like, hey Rob, would you like to save $100, on your auto insurance? Like, who would say no to that, right? That's priming. That's getting the yes before the yes. Um, reciprocity, giving people the option to pick a time versus telling them when you're going to call them. So like, I gave you the option, now you're going to want to give me the option to do it. Getting people committed. So, hey, is now a good time to talk? Yes. Okay, great. Should I call you now or in 10 minutes or whatever it is, but getting them to socially commit to saying that now is a good time, that's commitment consistency. People generally want to follow through with what they say they're going to follow through with. So having people register for a webinar, right?
Mm.
And then following up and reminding them that they register for the webinar. All this stuff you can put into any funnel, any psychology at all, and a lot of it. Am I doing the Snicker story now, or you want to save it?
Well, yeah, I'd love to do it, but I mean, I guess where before you jump into Snickers, I guess all this ties back into the fact that we're conversational. We're not just push, right?
Yeah.
And so before you jump into Snickers, because I do want to hear it, but how does somebody, like, if I come to you and I say, "Hey, look, AC, I want to get more conversational with my membership." Like, I just don't feel like, for example, retention to me is anxiety. Getting that initial money is easier than like telling them a year later they owe me again. And
Yep.
so I go to you and I say, "Hey, AC, how could I have a conversation with these people throughout the year that's conversational, meaningful, doesn't disrupt my brand or hurt my brand?" What does that look like? Like with building those scripts, do you depend on me? Do you help me? How does that work?
It's a collaborative effort. So I think of it as a consumer journey, right? You've seen these diagrams where you got bucket A, that's consideration. Bucket B is they got a quote. Bucket C is they bought, right? So now I'm a member of Leads Council. Bucket D is they're, reading and engaging the webinars. E is something else, all the way down to G where they rebill, right? So they converted. The idea is you should be having a different conversation in between each bucket, right? So I think of this as like dispositions if you think in like call center terminology. So I'm a paying member, but I'm not engaged in content yet, as an example, right? I'm paying for the membership, but I haven't shown up on the weekly leadership webinar series. So the idea would be that we would craft a very specific conversation to push them towards awareness and adoption. There would actually be two conversations. There'd be one for registration, right, to get them to register. But, hey, Rob, so glad you're a silver membership. Haven't seen you on the webinar series yet. Is 3 o'clock on Thursdays good for you? Question mark. Some open ended, very easy to engage a conversation. You can do this over email. You can do this over text. You can do this over Facebook. You can do this wherever your audience is. But the idea is to get a response, right? That's part of priming, right? So, can you make Thursdays at 3 o'clock work? Question mark, right? Like, what are they going to say? Like, maybe somebody has a board meeting every Thursday at 3 o'clock and they can't, but generally they're going to say, yeah, I could. I just need to move my schedule. Oh, that's great. I'm going to send you the link. Here's how to register. 2 hours later, did you get the link? Did the link work? A day later, hey Rob, saw you didn't register yet. What's going on? Question mark. Oh, sorry, I've just been busy. Oh, no worries. I'll follow up later on. You know what I mean? So that's what it looks like. It's polite persistence in order to remind them to get there, because it's hard. Everybody's very busy, especially, I mean, you're in a tough spot, right? Because you're dealing with business individuals, right? They're very busy. So getting them to do more work is tough.
It's been, yes. Well, look, man, I appreciate you taking that time out. So well, I guess what my question was more for you, like, since, for example, using me as an example, if I wanted to go to you, do you help me figure that out? I mean, is that something Drips does? I mean, do you, and you,
Yeah, absolutely. There may be there may be more appropriate tools. Like I may for you, like I always do this for B2B, where I'll look at it, I'll try to figure out if it's something that we should handle, if there's a better tool, because you're a single operator for this particular funnel and you're doing more B2B, not B2C. It's slightly different.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, at minimum, very consultative,
okay.
very creative, collaborative process where we would map out your consumer journey. And I don't care if you're Rob Sieber looking to get more people involved in Leads Council, or you're Ryan Hemker, who's running new acquisition on pay per call for Liberty Mutual. You still have a funnel, right? You still have an audience that you need to make aware. Then you have people that are aware that you need to get converted, and you have people that are converted that you need to get engaged with, and people that are engaged that you need to renew and rebuild with. So that would be step one. Is we would schedule some time, we'd walk through the funnel, figure out where the holes are, and then figure out what is the message that we need to send to these people and when.
I just want to make sure that when people listen to this and they hear all of this stuff about the 50,000 foot of stuff about, the breakdown of SMS, that they actually know that, hey, look, I'm not an expert at this. And so it kind of is intimidating for me when I hear you talk about this. I understand it, and applying it, that's a whole different area, as you know. So I just want to know, like, if I were to engage you, I'm being handheld through this process to some extent. And I like knowing that. And so now, help me out. Is this going to be worth the time if we do the Snickers story? Help me,
I'll
because
make it quick. I'll make
yeah,
it
go
super
ahead.
quick. So
Go ahead.
this I can't remember if this is in that specific book, but part of all this and the point behind the Snicker story, I'll just lead with the end in mind, is to know your audience, right? So that is part of our first piece of discovery with Drips when we're talking to, whether it's Rob or ADT or whoever it may be, is who are you marketing to and what are you trying to get them to do? That those two pieces are so important, because what we do in the middle, we need to be
Yeah.
drawing the straightest line possible, right? We need to know that this person came from Facebook, they were interested in this is what the ad looked like, this is what they read, this is how they engaged with it. You tried to call them twice and you're trying to get them to buy a policy or whatever it is, and then we keep very very tight continuity in that scripting. So it's about knowing your audience. The Snicker story, I'll try to make this as brief as possible. uh, Mars, right? That's the company I believe that owns Snickers. Snickers was the worst candy bar they had on the market. This is a couple decades ago, and all the taste tests were great, but nobody could figure out why the Snickers bar wouldn't sell. So one person, one marketer, he decided to take it upon himself to figure out, how to sell more Snickers. And he went to a gas station near his house, and he sat in the parking lot of this gas station for a couple days, 10-hour shifts with binoculars, and he would watch the Snickers shelf. And as soon as somebody picked up a Snickers and bought it, he would chase this poor person to their car and grab them and say, "Hey, why did you buy that Snickers bar?" Freaking people out. And 4 out of 5 people said, "Because I was hungry." And he said, "Well, okay, but why didn't you buy uh, the Almond Joy or Mars or Nestle this or whatever, some other candy bar that they sold?" And they said, "Well, that tastes more like a dessert to me. It's more decadent. It's more, it's creamier. It's not as crunchy. Where this tastes like food. It's got peanuts and peanut butter and caramel and crunchiness and whatever. So it fills them up." And that is what precipitated the hungry get a Snickers.
Got it.
And the changing of that marketing message
Mm,
turned that into their number one bestseller, period.
yeah. That's amazing. Well, thank you. When you throw that at me, I'm always like, okay, we're going to have to carve out some time for that. Um, I want to, because we're a regulatory compliance focused association, I want to take this back. I know when I started, dealing with this. In fact, that's one of the first times you and I had a conversation. We were looking at putting something together just specifically for SMS and text messaging. By the way, if you hear anything, it's F-35 flying overhead from Luke Air Force Base. Freedom.
Awesome.
Anyway, um, uh, what I wanted to say was, you were thinking about putting together something like counsel for the SMS industry. And so I knew when you approached me early on through JT Benton, thankfully, um, I knew that your focus was first about getting it right, doing it right, protecting the consumer, making sure that not only you were abiding by the law and doing it right, but the people who were doing business with you. At that point in time, especially like with TCPA, I was hearing things like, well, text messaging isn't a call. It is a call. It's not a TCPA. We have some pretty definitive boundaries on that right now. And we now have the luxury of 5 years since I've been involved with it. Help me understand, where does compliance fit with you? Where does it fit with drifts? Where does it fit with text messaging and some of those other nuances about the industry?
Great questions. I think early on, sorry if you guys hear that, I had to open up my windows because I burned the bacon. Um,
We never
if
noticed.
if Okay, sorry, text messaging. Yeah, so a couple things. One, I think texting years ago, and you may remember this, it had a bad rap, right? And that's because it's such a good way for marketers, spammers, right, to get people to at the time it was things where you get them to sign up for whatever horoscopes or these things where it was charging their stuff, $10 a month for horoscopes or whatever, and attached it to their phone bill. And there was a huge regulatory, effort to squash that kind of stuff. And then a lot of spammers moved to SMS again because it's just a great penetration tool where there's not as many eyeballs on email, and emails inundated. SMS is a rarely untapped or regular, excuse me, relatively untapped market. And you see this, right? Like how many spam calls do you get versus how many spam text messages do you
Yeah.
get? It's not even comparable. So couple things. One, everybody thought it was scary and bad because they heard a lot of companies that had got lawsuits because of it. That's because those companies were not doing it in a compliant manner. That's where a lot of those big class actions come from. They didn't have consent. They were just sending it out. Just like people, I mean, this happened a year ago. Everybody said the same thing about ringless voicemail. It's not a call. It's not a, it's not this, not that until it is, right? Now everybody, you can't do it without consent.
That's right.
Um, so we from the beginning, kind of just looked at what the law said. It was, and yeah, TCPA didn't say, or text. It was mostly around calls, but I think most lawyers at the time said like, yeah, texts are going to be treated just like calls, so treat them like calls. And that's what we did. So, in the eyes of law and the eyes of drips, a text is a call and a call is a text, right? It's the same thing. If you're hitting up somebody's phone, whether it be voicemail, text, call, in an automated fashion, you need to have consent or prior written consent or pre-existing business relationship.
Yeah, it's funny because I know that you also go to affiliate summits, and not to knock that show, because I really enjoyed the I really enjoyed what I learned from affiliate summit as well. But there were no fewer than a half a dozen people come up to me and say, "Look, I've got like this 2 million phone number database, and I'm looking for somebody to text. Do you know of a platform?" If you see if you see that guy coming, what first of all, I know you're smiling right now, but what is that like? What flag does that throw? And then subsequently, what do you do as a result of somebody asking that?
Look, I think 3 years ago, 2 years ago, a lot of platforms took the stance of, and when I say a lot of platforms, I mean a lot. We've always tried to make sure that we were covered, meaning like we trusted the data coming in. It took a lot longer to grow the company that way because we didn't take the what I call the don't ask, don't tell approach that a lot of technology providers do. Right? They're like, well, we just sell guns, right? We don't
Yeah.
shoot people. Uh, and that's worked for some companies, and it's not worked for others. I mean, I see Twilio getting roped into lawsuits nowadays, and they should have a don't ask, don't. I mean, they are dumb pipes. And when I mean that, I mean that respectfully. I mean, they are just an API. They are not doing anything other than exactly what the client tells them to do. They're like a telephone provider. It's like if I called somebody and threatened to punch him or whatever, it'd be like suing Verizon for letting me make the call, for assault. So, I think nowadays, as litigators, professional litigators are trying to rope everybody in, right? The service provider, the telco providers, the platforms, the the publishers, the lead generators, the brokers, like the whole chain. I think now that's happened. A lot of people are getting much more careful about who they allow on their network, or at least they should be.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
mean,
and
Andrew
and
Smith has made that very clear from the FTC
yeah,
that every touch point along the way in the ecosystem shares a level of responsibility.
that's right. So and it goes the other way too, right? It's not just who does Drips want to do business with. I'm seeing more and more companies are gravitating towards Drips because we have a focus on compliance. It's like I don't want to call it compliance as a feature. I feel like that's a little it's kind of catchy.
It's
Um,
DNA, though. I mean, it's
Yeah,
DNA.
exactly. Like they want to work with a company that cares about quality assurance, that cares about state level and federal regulatory laws, that cares about monitoring all opt outs and what do you do at night? What do you do if there's a hurricane? Like these are things there's not necessarily rules for. I'm working with you to write them, which is
Yeah.
great. But there's at best case best practices right now for a lot of this stuff, and I think a lot of people that are just trying to make a quick buck. The idea is just get as many people on the phone as you can. It's just a law
Well,
of numbers. You put a big spreadsheet in, and you get a bunch of calls.
we're up at the top of the hour, and I want to get a couple of just two more things in. One, you are a Leads Council board member. You're a Leads Council member. You're a subcommittee member. You head up stuff. You have been instrumental in driving traffic for us, and new membership, and putting together things that I've been just super happy to be a recipient of. So thank you very much. But from your angle, from your perspective, out there, people listening to this, as somebody looking at or considering the council, what has it meant for you? What has it meant for Drips? What do you think it means for the industry? And just help me understand, how to plug this thing and promote it from an AC level.
Look, I think the biggest thing is thought leadership, understanding, keeping your ear to the ground. I mean, if you're best in class or you're trying to be, you have to be in the know. I think I've actually heard you say this before, especially when it comes to the regulatory stuff. Is you can be an expert today and ignorant tomorrow, and that is so true. But it's also true with a lot of other tangential things. Not just regulatory, but marketing tools, softwares out there, methodologies, how to buy media on Facebook, how home service companies are shifting, efforts with COVID. And I'm not aware of a better organization that has the buyers, the sellers, the platforms, the technology companies uh, in it, like Leads Council, that you can see with these weekly webinars and the newsletters that like the voice is being unlocked, the authority and the understanding and the influence is there. So I've actually been a happy subscriber of the webinar. I blocked it off on my calendar Thursday at 3 p.m. It'll play in our office, for the whole team when we're all back in the office. But I don't know. To me, it's like watching the news. It's like getting that syndicated, best in class information that I don't know where else you get it without individually holding all of those relationships and having 37 conversations on a monthly basis.
I've been thinking actually of setting up some sort of news, in conjunction with all the other things that I'm barely getting done today anyway. But I appreciate those kind words. I think that dead on, just basically nails it with what we're trying to accomplish here at the council. I mean, and then, you take something like our response to COVID and how we've adapted and adopted the things that we're doing, and trying to answer, that void, or that gap of where, and I remember you and with Fluent and DMS and, just tons of big companies, PX, I don't want to leave anybody out, but, immediately responding and saying, look, let's use the council as a conduit to get this expert advice out, to get this information that's so critical to the industry. And so I certainly appreciate the fact that you've been a driver of that kind of thing. I want to leave with this, because I ask most people, like, put on your crystal, ball, put it on, or the hat, whatever it is. And what I'm asking is that where do you think that the industry is going to be 12, 24, 18, 24 months down the road? What are we looking at? What can we be? What's in store for us? Maybe from a drips or a SMS side of things, or just anything, lead
Hmm.
gen.
Um, well, for texting, you know, I think you're going to see more adoption. And I'm just going based on my personal experience as we talk to the H&R Blocks and the Amexes of the world. Like they just get it. They understand that their competitors are doing it, or smaller, companies in their sectors are doing it. And it's working. It's working much better than call centers. I think specifically for this pandemic, talk about a fast forward. I mean, you can't rack and stack bodies right now, and a lot of companies are finding out that you shouldn't. You don't need to. A lot of these people can work from home, and then you start thinking, okay, what are they doing from home or from the call center that could be automated? Why are we paying? Why are we having Jane or John do 50 calls a day when they could do 500? If they're all inbound, they're all scheduled calls. Um, so I think more adoption is what you're going to see from the enterprise level. And with that, I think we're also going to see a bifurcation. And a bifurcation is when you have one thing that is then split into two. But I think we're going to see a bifurcation of the good and the bad players. And what I mean by that is there's going to be companies that are focused on compliance, focused on all of it, ISO 27001, HIPAA, PII, like doing it as well as you can for enterprise. And then there's going to kind of be, the people out there that are just spamming, and the problem with that is it jams up a lot of legitimate industries, right? One thing I've noticed, and I'm sure a lot of our friends at like Francesco at Freedom can attest to, they're when you have people that can spam anybody in the industry, you get these black hat guys or whatever, and they're sending messages to the white pages essentially, right? Like you're getting a text, the next person in line is getting a text, and so on. The random number sequential type things. You send out stuff that is mass market applicable, right? So you don't send out bathtub fitter wraps, right? Because that's only going to land on a 1% of the market. You send out credit repair, student loan consolidation, save money on, this or that. And then you look at what AT&T and T and the CTIA and Twilio and everybody else have to deal with, and who is getting hammered the most. It's financial services, and it's because of all those bad actors out there that are spamming out these mass, applicable products, right? Because again, you want to send it out. Like debt consolidation is probably a good thing to send out right now because everybody's getting into debt. But what that does is it jams up our friends at debt.com and creditrepair.com and freedom financial, and they can't then legitimately get out messages, or they're at least at best they're lumped in with all the bad actors, right? And a telco provider, a Verizon, et cetera, they can't tell the difference. So I think what's happening is things like Stir Shaken, things like 10 DLC, that's going to enable the enterprise to say, no, look, we are doing it right. We are verified. All these other numbers are not. And then there'll be, technologies and filtering companies in the middle that will help, part those two traffic segments.
I am quickly going to go to my AC acronym dictionary as soon as this is over. You dropped a mouthful of them over there, but I I really appreciate the insight. I do believe that you have your ear to the ground. I know that you're plugged in. I know you always turn over rocks and see what's underneath it, and that that's very clear with how you've closed this out for us and gave us a little perspective of where the industry is headed. AC, I got to be honest with you, this has been a pleasure. I knew it would be fun. I knew it would be easy. I really appreciate it. Now I'm going to have to edit this thing down and put the right right little plugs in there for you. I want to make this one as fun as it's been for me. But thank you very much. I really appreciate the time.
Appreciate it, Rob. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you. All right,
Boom.
bud. I thought
Great.
that went well, man.
Yeah, you're good at this.
even 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 your bacon moment, man.
Oh
I am
yeah.
not taking that shit out. I'm just telling
Yeah.
you right now,
That's
I am
super.
not.
I should have brought it by and actually here, hold on. I'll give you a quick video. One second.
All right. Uh, that's awesome. Oh, great.
Just
Well,
burnt to shit.
that is awesome, dude, man. Well, hey, look, all in the spirit of work, right?
Yes,
But
sir.
all right, man. Well, look, that was fun to do, man. I want to keep doing these. I think that they're important, and even if two people watch it and it changes their world, I think it'll be cool.
Great, Rob. Yeah, we'll obviously share it with us as you can. We'll help push it. We'll restream it live and pull out quips and relink and whatever else. But Jonathan's all about getting the
Yeah,
content machine going. So whatever we can do.
I think you will, man. But thank you very much, man. I really appreciate everything you do.
All good. Thanks, Rob. Talk
All right,
soon.
talk to you
Bye.
later. Bye.